Eye Contact, a Mark Manning Mystery, Book 2. Author, Michael Kraft. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator, Eric Aust. Just as the others are voicing their assent and Neil turns to search for a waiter in the crowd, someone taps him on the shoulder, telling him with dry enthusiasm, "Neil, the place is fabulous. Congratulations." "Victor?" says Neil, rising. "I thought I spotted you over at the bar." The man would be hard to miss, well over 6 feet tall. "Let me introduce you to some people." Neil tells the others that Victor Utley was appointed by the mayor a few months ago as the city's new cultural liaison to the world. Utley interjects, whatever that means. The group laughs with him. Neil explains that Utley has been involved in coordinating many of the committees that are planning Celebration 2000. Then Neil asks him to meet Manning, David, Hector Bosch, and Claire Gray. Utley's languid manner becomes suddenly animated. "My God, Miss Gray? I had no idea you'd be here tonight." He crosses from Neil to her, eager to shake her hand, but his progress is impeded by a severe limp. Noticing this, Neil says, "Victor, what happened?" "Silly me," he tells Neil. "Rollerblading at my age. Lucky not to break a knee." Then he returns his attention to Claire, whom he obviously holds in great esteem. Watching Manning decides that Utley is perhaps 30 years old, his fop wristed gushing over the Broadway director, coupled with the lilting cadence of his speech, fits an over-the-edge stereotype that Manning can't help finding laughable. Completing the picture, Utley sports a lean dark suit of fashion-forward Italian design, worn over a gauzy crew-neck sweater. He babbles at Claire, who politely responds to his questions and flattery. At last, he tells her, "I don't want to intrude any further, Miss Gray. Perhaps later this evening we could chat again. Meanwhile, I need to step aside for a ciggy break. Tal, it's been a hoot." As they watch Utley limp away through the crowd, Justin, the Happy Happenings waiter, swaggers by with an empty tray. "There you are," says Neil, realizing that the waiter hasn't been seen since disappearing with Daryl, the copy kid. "What happened to Daryl?" And Justin looks about vacantly. He's making the rounds," Claire says. "Since you mentioned rounds, darling, could you please—" David offers. "Let me give you a hand with that, Justin." Hector is about to suggest that David should stay put, but he's already on his feet, sauntering away with Justin, his beefy arm draped across the waiter's shoulders. As they pass near the front door, another waiter opens it to admit a new arrival. Seeing who it is, Manning crosses the room to greet her. "Welcome, Roxanne. Glad you could come." He kisses her cheek, just at the corner of her lips. "Where's Carl?" "He's late in a meeting. I doubt if he'll make it at all." "God, Mark, this is gorgeous." "Thanks to you-know-who." Manning begins guiding her through the crowd, saying, "He's over here with some people I'd like you to meet." When they arrive where the others are seated, Neil bounces up to give Roxanne a hug. "Hi there, Rox. You look great." She does look great. Mid-30s, mature, bearing, fit body, strictly professional but highly stylish linen suit, straight blonde hair, and a perfect new bob. "Love the do," he tells her. "Very handsome. I dare say mannish." He growls his approval. "Thank you," she says dryly. "It seems I saw more of you before I moved to Chicago. It's not fair. The practice is thriving, so my life's not my own." "Lawyers," says Neil. "That sums it up. Claire and Hector, I'd like you to meet Roxanne Exner, a dear friend, token female partner at Kendall, Crichton, Yashira, and esteemed Chicago law firm. Rox, it's my pleasure to introduce you to none other than Claire Gray and Hector Bosch." They all shake hands. Roxanne compliments Claire on her latest production. Hector's on his column while welcoming them to the city. Referring to the law, she tells them, "I saw the plans, but the guys wouldn't let me near the place while things were torn up. I'm amazed. Isn't it wonderful?" "Indeed," agrees Claire. Tell me, Miss Exner, how do you happen to know these gentlemen? Do you cross paths professionally?" With Mark, yes, she answers. I did some work for the estate of a woman who was missing a while back. We compared notes from time to time, as we did on an earlier story. We became friends. Standing next to Manning, she hugs his waist. Hell, says Manning. We had a fling. Neil volunteers. That was before I came along. Hector smiles uncomfortably. Actually, says Roxanne, I knew Neil much earlier in college. We were both involved in a local political campaign. I was a senior, he was a freshman. We hit it off right away. You can still see what drew me to him. Neil smirks, then tells the others. We kept in touch, and I used to stay with Roxanne from time to time when I came here on business from Phoenix. I met Mark at a party she threw for me. Roxanne asked rhetorically, How's that for a twist of fate? The two men I was most interested in, and I brought them together. It was meant to be, Manning tells her. Then he adds, By the way, thanks. He kisses her cheek again. Besides, Neil tells her, you did fine in the man department. Carl's hot. For a father figure, she concedes. Neil tells her, he's not that old. Roxanne reminds him, he's a senior partner. Neil persists. Carl Crichton is what, 10 years older than you? 12. Close enough, says Neil. Point is, you're obviously satisfied, or you wouldn't be dropping hints about the M word. Marriage is not a dirty word, she says. The time may be right. Maybe not. We'll see. She pauses and says, the next few days could be revealing. Carl and I are driving up to Door County tomorrow. He bought a new convertible for the trip. Some high-end roadster. That's why I cut my hair. Door County? Asks Neil. Still not totally at home in the Midwest. Manning tells him, it's up in Wisconsin. A resort area on a peninsula. Oh, Neil's brows arch. Sharing a cabin in the North Woods? As a matter of fact, yes we are. Justin and David arrive with a tray loaded of drinks. Justin holds the tray while David distributes the glasses. Manning asks Roxanne, what would you like? He leans close. Mineral water? Yep, she says, not thrilled with the choice. Still on the wagon. Good girl, says Neil. Don't be patronizing, she tells him. It's been over 2 years, and I still think about it every day. Manning hugs her shoulder. I know how you feel. I quit smoking about the same time you swore off liquor. It's a bitch, but it beats the alternative. I know, she says, resigned to a new life. A better life, one that she still doesn't find appealing. Softly, Manning tells her, Come on, let's get you fixed up. He excuses himself from the group and leads Roxanne off toward the bar. Once lost in the crowd, he asked her, Everything okay? Yes. There's an uncertainty in her voice that elicits a probing gaze from Manning. She tells him, Really, Mark, everything's fine. Carl and I are on the right track. You and Neil have built your dream home, and I'm coping with sobriety. She concludes, Nothing could be finer. She shifts gears. How's your life these days? He sighs. Hectic. We've been under the gun getting ready for tonight. Neil's up to his neck with Celebration 2000, and now I'm embroiled in 2 stories that have raised more questions than answers. I'm not only losing sleep over them, I'm dreaming about one of them, Planet Zarnick. She halts their progress toward the kitchen. I mean, to talk to you about that piece of yours in the early edition. Hardly up to snuff, Mark. He hesitated. Can I take you into my confidence? This may sound nutty, but it's top secret, at least for now. You know you can trust me. He knows he can. Strolling her to her quieter corner, he tells the story. When he has finished, she says, I'd ask if there's any way I can help, but it seems you're on your own. I know, Roxanne, but thanks for lending an attentive ear. I've always admired your logical thinking, to say nothing of your more corporeal assets. So please, keep my predicament in mind. Maybe something will click. I'll let you know, she says. Now, do you suppose we might find a Pellegrino? Or club soda suffice? In a pinch. Wending his way with her toward the kitchen, Manning again notices the entry of new arrivals. It's editor Gordon Smith and his wife. Manning asks Roxanne, Could you possibly fend for yourself at the bar? It's the boss. I'd better say hi. Good luck. Her mouth curls into an ominous smile. Then she turns in search of bottled water. Manny nudges through the crowd and arrives at the door just as the Smiths have ordered their drinks. Gordon, he says, big smile. And Polly! Glad you could come. They all shake hands. It's Molly, the woman tells Manning, tittering at his gaffe. Of course, Molly, sorry, he says. It's been a while? Whew. Smith is wide-eyed. Quite a badge you've got here, Marco. Thanks, Gordon. It's Neil's brainchild. I just signed the checks. Smith reminds him. Never underestimate the power of the pen. They chuckle. Then Smith frowns. Mark, he doesn't use the nickname this time. Speaking of the power of the pen, your bulldog story wasn't quite what I expected. Manning gulps. Gordon, Molly interrupts. Time for me to bow out? If you boys are talking business already, I'll just do a little mingling. She kisses her husband, waggles her fingers at Manning, and disappears into the crowd. Smith says, We've been promoting that story for 3 days as an in-depth page. One Sunday blockbuster? What happened, Mark? Other than the hoo-ha about Zarnick's computers, the story was little more than a rehash of old news. Listen, Gordon. Manning pulls him aside from the clump of people near the door and leans close to be heard over the noise. Something's up. Something big. There is no 10th planet. The guy at the observatory isn't Zarnick, and this may all be related to Cliff Nolan's murder. What are you talking about? Manning details his suspicions, then tells his editor, the timing isn't right to print any of this. But because of the journal's broadcast blitz, I had to deliver something. However feeble. Smith asks, why not blow the whistle on him? Even though the story's not complete, it would make a sensational Sunday headline. Because I can't prove anything yet. Manning rivets him with a stare. And there's more. Gordon, Nathan Kane, may be in danger. This is only a hunch, but his Pentagon pals may have set him up for something. Christ, mutters Smith, trying to sort through Manning's news. Should we tell Nathan? We could phone right now. I can have him paged. Not yet, says Manning. Frankly, I don't think he'd buy me a theory, and I have nothing to back it up. I suggest we tread water a little longer. Give me a few days to try to piece this together. Smith's lower lip is pinched between his teeth. He opens his mouth to speak, hesitates, then says, Okay, Marco, you can call the shots for a while. He breaks into his customary grin, makes a fist, and cuffs Manning below the shoulder. Be careful, huh? We wouldn't want to lose our jobs over this. They both laugh, but without much gusto, realizing that the joke about consequences are indeed a possibility, however remote. Smith asks, when do you plan to get going on this? Is tonight soon enough? I invited Zarnick to the party. He said he'd come. Good move, says Smith, pondering the mystery. He says, Nathan's one of the smartest guys I know. If they're planning to make a stooge out of him, they don't know him very well. Even though you never see Nathan in the newsroom, I assure you, he's a hands-on micromanager. Nothing gets past him. If they think they can get around him to use the journal for clandestine purposes, they're in for a surprise. What if they planted someone to help make it happen? Come on, says Smith. This is starting to sound way too cloak and dagger. There's no way they could. Gordon stops, nearly choking on the thought. Lucy? He breaks into laughter. That redhead! Without expression, Manning waits for Smith's mirth to subside. He tells his editor, Consider this. Not only does she have Pentagon connections, but she also has access to electronic drafts of reporter stories. I never knew that. Did you? There's good reason to assume that Cliff was filing a story exposing Zarnick at the time he was shot. Lucille Herring could have been watching from her own monitor as he typed every word of it. And I'm willing to bet she's been trained in the use of guns. Smith ponders all this. Maybe. Hey, she's supposed to be here tonight. Nathan all but ordered her to put in an appearance. Exactly, says Manning. Let's see what develops. Any other suspects? Zarnick himself, of course, whose obvious motivation would be to avoid exposure. I've also got something of a wild card. Cliff's nosy neighbor. She struck me as someone who might be nutty enough to kill for some peace and quiet. I thought I'd go talk to her again tomorrow. Good idea, says Smith, nodding. Then he thinks of something. Say, Marco, as long as you plan on doing some work tomorrow, maybe you could drop by the newsroom and clean out Nolan's desk. Sundays are quiet there, and you won't be interrupted. You might pick up a clue. Manny is surprised by Smith's suggestion. You mean the police haven't gone through his stuff yet? They sure tore apart his apartment. The editor shrugs. I guess they're stretched thin by all this festival stuff. There's talk that the president is coming. He snorts. Nathan was right. The police do need some help on this case. The music that has been playing now ends, and after a short pause, the space begins to pulse with a remix of last winter's chart topper. The stretch of open floor where some younger guests have been dancing now fills to capacity with partygoers of all ages. Mark, says Claire, approaching from behind, I'm in search of a partner. Hector's a skilled dancer. His tango's truly wicked, but this isn't quite his style. I'd be delighted, Manning tells her. But first, have you met Gordon Smith? He's managing editor of the Journal. After an exchange of pleasantries, Smith says, I seem to need a drink, so I'll leave you two to boogie. If we don't talk later, Mark, let's meet first thing Monday at the office. And he's gone. Manning tells Claire, be forewarned. I'm not too current with dance trends, but I can probably muster something more timely than a foxtrot. Whatever, says Claire. I just enjoy moving to the music. More important, I hope we could talk by ourselves. Oh, Manning lifts his hands. Claire does likewise. They touch palms to palms and sway their bodies, a restrained interpretation of the frenetic beat that is other dancers whirling and stomping, flapping their elbows like wounded birds. Manning tells her, I've never been much for the club scene, and to be honest, I haven't danced with a woman for a while. I hope you're not disappointed. Don't be so modest, dear. You move naturally and with self-assurance. You're a splendid dancer, to say nothing of a perfect host. Not expecting such flattery, Manning says, I've never been told that before. She squeezes his fingers. Gay men. She trails off. I do enjoy your company, Manning says wryly. I'll bet Hector doesn't quite approve. No, she admits. But it's my life to live, and I like it that way. I love Hector, but I could never marry him. Isn't that curious? We're so different, but in many ways we're too much alike. The mysteries of human chemistry, she laughs. I shouldn't burden you with my emotional musings, not when you're wrapped up in mysteries of your own. Persevere, Mark. You'll unravel it. You're good at this, probably the best. When you solved that missing person case, it wasn't for sloppy reporting that they handed you a partridge prize. An uncomfortable grin falls across Manning's face. He tells her, they didn't hand me a partridge. Oh dear, I'm sorry, she says. I remember reading something about it. I assumed you had it sewn up. I assumed so too. Most everyone did, but the awards committee saw it differently. There was a problem with the fact that I had delayed announcing my find until the last minute. At a public inquest, there was a feeling that I had unduly sensationalized the story, and it didn't help matters that I accepted a $500,000 reward from the estate. Some of the committee felt that I had already gotten my prize. He pauses, weighing the possibility that these concerns of the committee might be justified. Then he tells the rest. But the deciding factor I've learned was sheer politics, if not outright prejudice. The Chicago Post, our competitor, has some contacts on the committee, and they managed to sway a vote or two. Their objection, get this, had nothing to do with the method of ethics of my reporting. The pace of their dancing slows to a shuffle, as Manning explains to Claire. Shortly after breaking that story, I came out in print. It was no big deal. I worked it in as an aside where it was relevant to another interview. I still feel it was the honest, responsible thing to do, but there's still a lot of people, sophisticated people, who have trouble with gay issues. So the bottom line is that I wasn't deemed quite worthy of the brass bird. Claire has listened quietly. I'm stunned. I had no idea that such prejudice still existed at an official level. The Partridge Prize is handed out by a private foundation, Manning reminds her. They can set any standards they please, and I defend their right to do so. Under the circumstances, you're more understanding than I'd be. Intellectual honesty is a path that sometimes leads to unexpected conclusions. She eyes him askance. Did you just make that up, or did you cop it from a fortune cookie? I'm not sure, he tells her with a laugh that acknowledges the heavy-handedness of his dictum. You can quibble with the rhetoric, but the notion is sound. Whenever we're willing to abandon self-evident principles for the sake of a quick fix, we indulge in the irrational, and when we forsake reason, choosing to disregard logic and the evidence of our senses, we toss away our very humanity, our innate tools for survival. We lay the groundwork for self-destruction. They no longer dance, but their hands still touch. Claire says, "Thank you, Mark. It's easy to lose sight of objectivity. We're tempted at every turn after, in the name of so-called higher ideals that are rooted in little more than mysticism. I needed a reminder. Keep doing what you've always done." And eventually the skeptics will notice the inescapable. She ponders their discussion for a moment and asks, "In light of what you've told me, do you even want a partridge?" "Of course I do," he tells her. "There'd be some money, sure, and the flash of fame would feel good, but most important, it's an affirmation. The brass bird may look like a cheap trophy, but it happens to be investigative journalism's highest award. It would tell me that I haven't been wasting my time. In short, it would prove that I was right." Claire draws their hands together, holding his between hers. "You were right," she assures them, "but you were robbed. Fortunately, your attitude is not only philosophical, but practical. You'll have other shots at the prize." "And that's the beauty of this business," he tells her. "You never know what's next, when opportunity might knock." And right on cue, someone answers the front door, and in walks Dr. Zarnick. He has been in the news so much lately, he is recognized by many in the crowd as Chicago's reigning celebrity. But he's a scientist, not a pop cult hero, so he's greeted not by a giddy mob, but by a round of whispers and sidelong glances. Claire tells Manning, "Better get cracking." "Come with me," he says. "I'll introduce you." Across the room, David has also noticed Zarnick's entrance. He sets down the remnants of another cocktail. "Come on," he says to Neil. "I'll introduce you." Manny, Claire, David, and Neil converge upon Zarnick as he finishes ordering a drink. The waiter turns to fetch it, but Zarnick reconsiders and tells them, "With Diet Cola, please, if you have it." The guy from Happy Happenings nods and disappears. "Ah, Mr. Manning," says Zarnick, spotting his host. "I hope you will forgive my tardy arrival, but your story in this afternoon's paper prompted numerous telephone calls. There were many requests for interviews, which, of course, I would not grant. These interruptions not only prevented my timely departure from the laboratory, but diverted me from a crucial phase in my research there. Such, alas, is the downside of public recognition." He punctuates the thought with a playful toot of the whistle that hangs, as always, with keys on the chain around his neck. His white lab coat has been left behind, replaced for the evening by a dark tweed jacket. Years out of style as well as wrong for the season. He wears the same necktie that Manning has already seen twice this week. But its knot is now pulled tight under Zarnick's chin, where the collar of his shirt bunches unbuttoned. Manning notices, in fact, that the button is missing. The edge of the collar has not yet frayed, but has pilled, abraded by the stubble of neck beard that escaped Zarnick's razor. Manning shakes his hand. "Better late than never, Professor. We're delighted you could come." "You haven't met Neil Waite yet, have you?" "No, I haven't," says Zarnick. He turns to Neil and extends his hand. "It's my pleasure, Mr. Waite." Neil tells Zarnick, "We're honored to have you in our home, Professor." The word is spoken with hesitation, as Neil doesn't know the man's true identity, and he's not as adept as Manny at acting out the charade. Zarnick says, "I understand that. Congratulations are in order. May you enjoy many years of happiness here." Then he notices David and Mr. Bosch. "It is good to see you again. I hope that yesterday's visit to the planetarium proved gratifying." With wide, innocent, boozy eyes, David overplays the dumb kid, telling Zarnick, "More than you'll ever know, Professor." Finding the insinuation clever, he tries to suppress a sloppy laugh. Manning grabs Zarnick's shoulder and wools him away from David. "Claire," he says, "permit me to introduce Dr. Pavo Zarnick, the astrophysicist I told you about." He says to Zarnick, I doubt if you keep tabs on American theater in your country, Professor, but I'd like you to meet one of our most respected directors and playwriters. He interrupts. Introductions are hardly necessary, not for the illustrious Claire Gray. Even in my homeland, we have quickly become fans of, as it called in English, barterers. Traders, she corrects him. Of course. Forgive me. I am humbled by your presence. Dear lady, he bows. Claire smirks at Manning, who makes a silent appeal for her to play along. She extends her hand to Zarnick, who kisses her fingers. Manning asks, So, Professor, were you satisfied with the story verifying your discovery? Entirely, says Zarnick, beaming. However, recognition for one's work, which I dare say we all crave, seems to bring with it an abrupt lack of privacy. Would that we might achieve the one without the other. Good luck, says Claire. Her wistful tone suggests that she has long abandoned such futile wishes. Whoa, says David, stepping forward, a bit unbalanced, shaking his head as if Claire should know better. That's bad luck, right, Professor? David crooks his pinky and displays it to the group, explaining, You've got a hook 'em, Zarnick laughs. Mr. Manning's young colleague is referring to a custom of my people. It surely appears silly to an outsider, but like most traditions, it has taken on meaning for us through the momentum of repetition. Miss Gray, he offers her his little finger. Claire happily obliges, offering her own pinky. They shake. She pauses in thought for a moment, as if something has dawned upon her. She asks Zarnick a question about his research, but finds that he is far more interested in discussing her opinions of the current Broadway season. They both lament that New York's theatrical scene has become dominated by revivals. Claire observes, Some of the best original theater in the country is coming out of Chicago these days, and I plan to get a healthy dose of it during my visit. Bowing out of their conversation, Manning summons David with a finger wag, signaling that they need to talk. He leads David a few yards away out of Zarnick's earshot. Neil follows. David, says Manning, you'd better shape up. There could be a lot at stake this evening. You want to blow it? David leans close to Manning's ear so that Neil won't hear him. I'd love to. But Neil has heard, and he looks at Manning with blank astonishment. Cut it out, says Manning. He's losing his temper, and David can tell, drunk as he is, that he's gone too far. If you want to stay on this story, you better clean up your act, and fast. Sorry, Mark. He turns to Neil. Sorry, Neil. I've had way too much to drink. It's okay, says Neil, relieved that David's tone has taken a new turn. He offers, Can I get you something? Coffee? A sandwich, maybe? Thanks. You're a bud. Manning gives Neil a quick hug and sends him off to feed David. He notices Roxanne standing alone near the door, sipping a tall, cool one, ice water. He makes his way through the crowd and asks her, Having a good time? I am, she tells him. You've collected a colorful circle of friends lately. Are you talking about the journal folks, he asks, or the gay contingent? Both. I spend my days and many nights with lawyers. Manning thinks he's heard a rap at the door. The music and the yammering now make it impossible to hear the buzzer. So most new arrivals simply walk in. Again he hears it. Someone is knocking. Patiently, methodically, waiting to be admitted. Manning trudges an apology to Roxanne, then reaches to turn the knob and swing open the door. There stands Lucille Herring, Nathan Kane's assistant. She wears a colorless suit similar to the one she wore at the office on Thursday, except that it has pants instead of a skirt. The tuft of cropped red hair blazes atop her head, a conspicuous exception to her otherwise featureless appearance. Even tonight, stepping out for a party, she wears no jewelry, no frills, nothing that acknowledges the festivity of the occasion, let alone her womanhood. She stands stiff in the doorway. Hello, Mr. Manning, she tells him. I'm here reporting as instructed. Good of you to come, says Manning, not at all sure what to think of this guest who was not invited but ordered to attend. Do come in. She crosses the threshold, and Manning closes the door, telling her, Miss Herring, let me introduce a great friend of mine, Roxanne Exner. Lucille Herring pumps Roxanne's hand with a firm grasp, all business. The ladies exchange a few comments about the summer weather, about their jobs, about the loft. Roxanne mentions, over the years, I've seen most of Neil's design projects, at least photos of them, and I can tell you without hesitation that this is his best work to date. Isn't it marvelous? The redhead glimpses about, jabbing the air with her nose as if sniffing a fire. I bet she's just looking, absorbing the room with a series of quick mental snapshots, giving no facial clue as to whether she likes the place or not. Very nice, she tells Roxanne without a trace of enthusiasm. Then she turns to Manning and in the same flat tone tells him, congratulations. She grips his hand and shakes it smartly once. Can we get you something? He asks her, snagging the arm of a waiter who is brushing past. Scotch, please. Neat. She dismisses the waiter with a sharp nod, then pivots to face Roxanne again, asking, your law work, do you ever see the inside of a courtroom, or is it all paper pushing? Roxanne laughs. Both, but mostly the later. To Manning's surprise, it seems the ladies have connected. There's actually a spark of rapport between the two, whom he presumed would have nothing in common. This may work out just fine, he tells himself. Roxanne has already broken the ice, so she stands a chance of gaining Lucille Haring's confidence and getting into her head. Deciding that Roxanne can best work this situation alone, Manning excuses himself and forays into the crowd to mingle with other guests. But the party is beyond mingling now. The hour has grown late, liquor flows freely, and the music is cranked high. David Bosch slumps semi-conscious on a sofa, where Uncle Hector ministers to him, and Neil attempts to hand-feed him a meatball. All the other guests, as well as most of the staff, are on their feet, jostling to the electronic beat. At the center of the action, Claire Gray and Pavo Zarnick flail about in the vortex of chest-pounding sound. Younger dancers, impressed, have backed off, giving the couple more space. Claire's index fingers jab at the ceiling a la Travolta. Zarnick adds to the din with a shrill disco blast of his police whistle. Manning shakes his head in mild astonishment and sideslips around the room, arriving at the sofa where David sips coffee from a cup that wobbles in an unsteady hand. Neil has spread an oversized napkin on David's lap, hoping to protect the kid's bare legs as well as the new furniture from spills. Hector sits with a vacant stare, watching Claire's performance with the astronomer. Manning places a hand on Hector's shoulder and leans to ask, almost shouting in his ear, enjoying the party? Oh my, yes, indeed, Hector responds politely, though insincerely. If the success of an evening can be judged by the level of energy expended by one guest, I'd have to say you've mounted a smashing entertainment. Manning pats Hector's shoulder, a silent thank you for the critic's gracious review. He asks Neil, how's David doing? He'll be fine, says Neil. I'll be fine, echoes David, slurring. Neil continues, he just needed a little nourishment. Manning steps behind the sofa and places both hands on Neil's shoulders. Congratulations, kiddo. He kisses the top of Neil's head. The party's a success and your loft is a hit. Our loft, Neil corrects him. Our home, says Manning, squeezing Neil's shoulders, more alert than before. David twists his neck to gaze up at Manning. Sure, guys, the party's a blast, but have you got any dirt on Zarnick? Manning is about to respond when the music stops. A moment later, a new song begins, much more sedate than the previous one. The disappointed dance crowd begins to disperse in search of misplaced cocktails. Manning moves to the front of the sofa and crouches before it, facing Hector, David, and Neil. He tells them, Zarnick seems to have hit it off with Claire, so I left her to do a little digging on my behalf. It's less conspicuous. Ditto for Lucille Haring and Roxanne. They're over by the doorway talking. My dears, says Claire, approaching from behind Manning with Zarnick. What an extraordinary event you've staged tonight. Manning rises to face her. Quite a compliment, considering the source. A waiter appears in their midst and asks, anyone for another drink? David raises a finger, opening his mouth to ask for something, but Hector cuts him off with a slicing motion of his hand. Manning, Neil, and Claire all dismiss the offer, but Zarnick says, I don't suppose another Jack and Coke would hurt? He blots sweat from his brow with a rumpled handkerchief, once white, now gray. The waiter asked, Diet Coke, right? Please, says Zarnick. You'll find me at the buffet. I do hope there are more of those clever peanut butter and celery hors d'oeuvres. He thanks Claire for their time on the dance floor, bids farewell to the others, and wanders off. Mystified, Hector asks the group, Jack and Coke? What in blazes is that? His lips buckle as he imagines the unsavory concoction. Jack Daniels, Manning tells him. Good old Tennessee sour mash, which I would bet is virtually unknown in Zarnick's war-torn homeland. Then he asked David, J.D. Tuell? Remember? He had 2 liters of American whiskey on his weekly shopping list. Neil snorts. If he puts away that much of the stuff, why bother saving calories on diet pop? The others glance at one another and laugh, shrugging a wordless reply to Neil's query. The anemic recording that has been playing now ends, and no one bothers to play something else. The party is winding down. Claire pulls Manning aside to tell him, You were right about Zarnick, Mark. He's a fraud. And that pinky shank of his, supposedly an Eastern European tradition, is nothing of the kind. I thought it seemed familiar, and it finally came back to me. In the theater world, there are many backstage superstitions. For instance, one never wishes the fellow actor good luck. Instead, many alternate rituals have taken hold, including the pinky shake. So I can tell you with reasonable certainty that this Zarnick character is no astronomer, but an actor. Probably a pro. Crashing glass interrupts the conversation. Silence in the room. Heads turn, seeking the source of the noise. A cocktail has been dropped near the door. Manning notices, and he's relieved that it was only rented barware. They'll be billed for any breakage, but it's cheap. Then he realizes that it was Lucille Herring who dropped the glass. Her face is red with either rage or embarrassment. Manning can't tell. She turns her back to Roxanne, opens the door, marches out, and slams it shut. Stunned, Roxanne glances about for a moment, crosses to the door with hesitant steps, opens it, steps out, and peers down the hall. Amid the murmur of other guests, Manning wins his way through the crowd and passes through the open doorway to join Roxanne in the hall. What happened? Roxanne stares down the hallway in the direction of Lucille Herring's abrupt departure. Then she turns to Manning, blinks. She's a lesbian. Yeah? Manning blinks. I figured so. And she, Roxanne pauses before continuing. She thought I was too? She came on to me, and when she realized her mistake, she freaked. I think my hair cut through her. Wide-eyed, Manning stares at Roxanne's newly cropped hair, trying not to snigger. And then he crows with laughter. Exasperated, she closes the door to the loft, leaving them alone in the hall. There's more, she says. And it's not funny. He catches his breath, calms himself wearily, yes. Sensing I was simpatico, she did a bit of soul-bearing. She really needed to talk to someone, and I got elected. Sometime after her arrival at the Journal, she ran into Cliff Nolan. He took a liking to her and began to pursue her, but of course she showed no interest in him. Ultimately, there was an after-hours encounter, and he actively tried to seduce her. Not quite rape, but he tried. From what she told me, Nolan was sort of a squirrely little guy, and she had no trouble fending him off. This cold response led Nolan to correctly deduce her homosexuality, and he threatened to spite her by exposing her gayness to the military brass. For weeks, she lived in mortal fear of losing her career. Then Clifford Nolan met his untimely demise. Needless to say, Lucille Herring shed no tears. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.